Great. Um, what can you tell us about local holidays, or what were the big holidays or religious festivals celebrated here?
Well, Bohunkus Day, you know, everybody says St. Patrick's Day, but Bohunkus Day was a big day. It was for the, they had the day off. The whole school, Butte High was off and that day, and Bohunkus Day was, again, the Croatians and the different ethnic groups, and they called it Bohunkus Day. And it was a big celebration. And then, of course, St. Patrick's Day, and what else? Them are two of them that I remember well as a kid. And St. Patrick's Day, we got our school closed, and Bohunkus Day, I think. Mm-hmm. Well, they had a big party. I don't think school closed, but they had a big party, and they dressed up, and yeah.
Do you ever remember anything like St. Stephen's Day being celebrated?
Well, there was I don't remember, but I remember there was St. Stanislaus. Was it? Not St. Stephen, St. Stanislaus Day, yeah. I think. But I don't remember much about it, but there was a St. Stanislaus Day, yes.
There was something, maybe it was that one, where there's a tradition called the Ren Boys, and they would go around town, and there was a certain kind of dress. It was kind of like what Halloween is now, but it seemed like an earlier Irish tradition that...
No, it was before, that must have been before my time.
Sure,
I mean,
sure. And, well, that's great. How do you think those celebrations have changed over the years?
Well, you know, I think back then they were, when I was a kid, they were more of a family deal. The kids nowadays, when St. Patrick's Day, for example, that's a day that everybody can get as much beer or booze as they want. But yeah, they celebrated it. When I was younger, we all celebrated St. Patrick's Day, but we didn't, it wasn't a drinking party or anything like it seems to be a lot of it today. And so I think it's definitely changed some. A lot of them that were family deals are not. Well, like I say, family life isn't like it was years ago, because there's so much to do outside of the family for kids, you know? I think that's part of it. If you talk to older people, they might tell you the same as I'm telling you, all of us old geezers. Yeah.
That's great. There was, well, we talked about sayings. Do you have any other sayings that you recall?
Well, all my cohorts tell me I should write a book about it. Now you ask me, I'm trying to think of some of them, but I always, I got some, I quote, some of them I just quote amongst my friends.
Sure.
And
we can come back to that
yeah.
one too if something
yeah,
occurs to you.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about calendar holidays. What sort of foods did you have growing up? Were there any food traditions that were specific in your family or your neighborhood?
No, we no, my grandmother and them had little gardens and that, but my mother and father never did. We never had any gardens. But we all like traditional foods, veggies and that, and we didn't have a lot of the fancy foods. I mean, and a lot of the people raised carrots and onions and lettuce and things like that. None of the, well, Butte is not any place to try to run to raise any food that takes any lot of time. I mean, carrots and potatoes you can, but I mean, you know, tomatoes you can do it now because, but I don't remember people raising tomatoes when I was a kid. but they do quite a few people raise tomatoes and things like that now. So we don't have a long enough growing season.
What sort of meals would your mother make?
Meals? Oh, my mother was a great cook. We had, because of my grandfather, he had a lot of things he liked. For example, lamb stew, which a lot of people don't. We used to have lamb stew, leg of lamb. A lot of people don't like lamb, but our family were great lamb. My kids are still great lamb people. But we had stews, both lamb stew and beef stew, and we had, my wife's an excellent cook, and she cooks and still does, you know, not much like, she don't like to cook because there's only the two of us now, but we had 8 kids, and she cooked a lot of things and baked macaroon pie, which you hardly ever see. It's something that she does, and apple pie, and my mother she baked apple pie. I don't remember any macaroon pie, but she baked apple pies, and I used to. I don't ever remember baking like a fresh cherry pie, but we used to have canned cherry pies and things like that. Yeah.
That's great. So in your family, are there any, and you talked about the journal that your mother gave you, are there any other mementos or keepsakes that have been handed down throughout the...
You mean, well, you mean things that my mother gave me and
or your father
my
or grandfather that have been in the family for a while?
Well, we have, I know we have, trying to think of some of the different things that we still have. I mean, we have a set of china that it's, I'm trying to think of the name of it now. It's beautiful china that my mother gave to us. It was, given to Esther and I. It was, I think it was made in England, very, very, in 1860 or something like that, you know. Indian Tree is the name of it. Beautiful china. We have that, and she had a lot of different things.
Ring, that's a beautiful
My
piece.
ring, and different things that, you know.
That's great. Were there any particularly Irish cultural traditions that you recall?
Any which?
Any particularly Irish cultural traditions in Butte that you observed or took part in, like dances or funeral rites, like wakes?
Well, we always had wakes. I think my mother was probably the last one I was buried from home. All my father and mother both were buried from home. They weren't buried in the undertakers. They were buried from home. They had the wakes at the house. And that's unheard of nowadays, but both of them were buried from our house. My father was buried, we had, down the South Montana Street we owned, and we had, where my mother and dad lived, and he was buried there, and my mother was buried from the Clark Mansion. Yeah, which was her home. She lived there, you know.
And what was the wake like?
Well, the wake was, and it was, like they say, that my father's wake was, my mother's wake wasn't that much. My father's wake lasted 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Everybody, they'd sit around and tell stories and that. And this happened was when my father first, and grandfather and that came from, they lost a child at a wake. I mean, they were partying, and the little girl reached up and there was a glass of gin, and she drank the gin and strangled and died at the wake. Yeah, yeah. So And that's a true story too. That she just there was a glass and she thought it was water. She's only 3, 4 years old, and she drank the water and strangled on. But at my father's wake, there were people there till, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. And they drank a little whiskey and they had food and stuff there, a lot of people, and still do that, One of my favorite stories is, and it ain't my story, but it's a true story. Dr. Ned Staples, who's dead now, but he tells the story about Honey Kiley, who was a dentist, and his mother died. And the Irish tradition was to bring things, to the family. And Ned, Dr. Staples, brings a cake to the family, and Honey looks at him and he says, "Jesus, we had you down for a ham." In other words, it was a joke, kidding him though. But, that's, and it was so wonderful if people could, not enjoy, but still be able to have a sense of humor, even at the death of their mother. He still was able to. Honey was a great guy. He was a dentist here in Butte for many years.
And it's such a great example of a community coming together to support each other.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
what
much.
they were, and they, and it wasn't a strict thing. And they was more outgoing, and they had food and they had food. Well, I know, and it's still that way to a degree. My daughter was killed down at the university. She was in a car wreck, and you couldn't believe the food and stuff that people brought. And of course, she was buried from the funeral parlor, but people brought to the house, and people came in the same way with my son David, my son Jim. I had 3 my children die, and people are still, a lot of people, it's not as like it was, and but people are still wonderful. They bring things, and only in Butte. I've never seen it. I've been to other towns and went to wakes and that for other people, but it was nothing like it is here that I've seen. It may be in other towns, but
I've never heard about it being quite like that. But that's great. Just a few more questions.
Sure.
And we'll let you go for the day here. Thank you so much for spending.
No problem. I'm happy to do it. Throw it all away when you get through. I don't care.
No, this will be great. And we'll send you a copy of it. You can listen.
That'd be nice.
Do you remember any traditional home cures for common ailments in your family or in?
Home cures?
Sure. Like the Vicks or anything
Well,
like
we
that.
had mineral oil. When we was a kid, we used to take mineral oil if we ever had any problem with our going to the bathroom. I mean, we got mineral oil or castor oil. I didn't mind the mineral oil. Castor oil, oh God, it was terrible. But a lot of my vintage kids remember the same thing. Orange juice and castor oil, or just castor oil plain, they killed the taste of it. And horse liniment, a lot of people used horse liniment if they had ache or pain, like arthritis or whatever we call it today. They put horse liniment on it, and I don't know. Another thing my dad was talking to us about, well, it's got something to do because he used to say, my mother never drank, and but my father enjoyed it. And he used to say, somebody says, "Sam, that's not very good whiskey you're drinking there," or something. He said, "There's no bad whiskey. Some is just better than others."
That's great.
Yeah.
Were there any superstitions that you remember?
Well, you wouldn't dare throw a hat on the bed. That was a superstition. you don't throw a hat on the bed. I don't know.
Do you know where that came from?
I don't know where the hell it came from, but yeah, that was that you don't put a hat on the bed. And I don't remember why I was told why years ago, but it's gone. But I can remember the fact that when I was a kid, people come in and throw a hat. Oh, don't do that. And they'd grab the hat and put it somewhere else. And what else? Not too many superstitious.
Sure. Interesting.
Yeah.
So one last question for you here. If you were to write the history of the Irish in Montana, what would you include for future generations?
Well, I guess I would include that they were fun-loving, helping, good Christian, not just Catholic, Christian people. The Irish, as I knew, most of them, well, there's bicycle Irish too, you know that, don't you?
No, what's
that? They're the kind that make your ass tired. I mean, don't quote that. That's what we call them around here, bicycle Irish. That is the kind that, they go on and on. But most Irish are not like that. But there are a few that like to tell you about it. You'd consider me one today after all this conversation. But no, the most of the Irish were kind Christian people, and they'd had tough times, or their parents had tough times, so they realized that helping people is what you should do. Yeah. So I don't know. That's what I would think. That I'd want the Irish to be remembered as people who cared about people. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or?
No, I don't think one thing that somewhere, I don't know where you put in, but my wife, she's Irish, and from an Irish family.
We'd love to come back and chat with her sometime if she's up for
well,
it.
she'd be up to it, but she don't. Her father, and he's the one that told me, don't start digging too far into the Irish because you might find something you don't want to know. And she believes that too. But my wife is a saint. I mean, she had 8 children and lost 3 of them already, and we've outlived 3 of our kids. And actually, she had 13 children. She had 5 miscarriages. They were not really miscarriages. We had twin boys born, and they died. Too young. We had an RH factor, blood factor. That back in those days, it was fatal. But now they give the women a shot, and it's no longer. They call them blue babies or something back then or something, but not now. They're doing fine.
Wow.
But I know, and one thing I think that the Irish, speaking about the Irish, my grandfather bought my grandmother a coat one time, and she didn't like the coat, so she let the dog sleep on it instead of sending it back. So they fought for years over that. He never talked to her for months and months, and she never talked to him. You've heard this before. Tell herself to pass the spuds, or tell herself. He wouldn't talk to her. She'd tell somebody else at the table to tell her to pass this. That's the Irish. So that's an Irish. Yeah.
And that went on for months.
Oh yeah, yeah. But
we can be stubborn when we get a mind to, huh?
Yeah. But you know who? And I don't know whether he's not well, but his mind is still fabulous. Kevin Shannon, have you heard of Kevin?
We've interviewed Kevin, yeah.
Yeah.
I met Kevin a few years ago.
Yeah.
We went and had a chat with him. I'd love to go back and see him.
Out here, he's in the rest home, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's got the...
He has an incredible
mind. Incredible mind. He can remember anything. And him and I, he's worked with me for 35 years with New York Life. I was the general manager and he was an agent. And my birthday's in October and his is his miners union day, and he's proud of that. 13th of June or 15th of June, whatever miners. And I'm that much older than him. And he gives me hell all the time. How about you old guys? And he's 6 months younger than I am, and so but he's sure a great guy, and he can really, what a memory. I enjoyed, I go out and see him. Not as often as I should, but I stop there every once in a while.
Yeah, we need to go see him again soon. But you'll have to tell him that everybody at the project says
yeah,
so.
I will.
Okay.
I will.
Well, I think we'll call it.
Well, I don't know if any of that's any good
much.
at all.
No, it's fantastic.
No.